messengers of the past and how they create with us. I'm Brenda's soul, is what others are going to understand. And when I do this vision well, I know who I'm working with and how I'm working with them. I understand the nature of redemption that many are utilizing in the idea that there's something wrong with us if we are going outside of ourselves for those messages from those who caretake our hearts often or always. You see, what happens is we are often liberating ourselves from the souls of old, is what we may think. But in essence, what's truly happening is a bygone era of soul, where we think that we're attracting those souls who somehow hurt us in our minds, right? They help us, is what some would say, to reveal the truth about the wisdom from their perspective as they knew it in their moment or their place in time as well. We have distinctions of souls that come through from various realms of discomfort for the process in which she is portraying herself to be of. But in essence, it's just another step on the journey of life for many of us who are going through this process of redemption of who we are. That's what a lot of people are saying. It's a redeeming of who we are. Others will say it's a retrieval, and others are saying I'm actually lifting myself up in the highlighted vision of who I am in every moment of every breath. That's where some souls are able to vibrate. And that means that when her soul comes through with those vibrations of love from those who are in her heart on this realm, it's sometimes not as pleasant as those who have already crossed over and reunited with the vision of the love of all in their own ways and times. Okay, they've all accepted their journeys. They've all accepted their loves. They've all accepted their hearts. And they are wise beyond their years, is where Brenda goes with certain souls who she sees as very enlightened in the ways in which they portray themselves online or in the field of justice, perhaps. She's been working with various souls from different perspectives for her whole life. Now, what that means is that in honor of all of us, we do expect people who portray themselves as evil in their minds, which is where some people are granting themselves that vision. They soon realize how disruptive that was to the characterization of each of us, because really, in essence, it's not of this plane. Okay? Others are saying it's a common occurrence in their minds, and that is due to the nature of whatever conditioning they have received, most often about who they are, where they are, or the experiences that they garner from others, that has them either cherishing themselves enough to say, that is so bad for me that I'm going to label it something so that I avoid it in the future. That's where a lot of people go, thinking that those ideas are somehow the worst thing ever, when in fact many men upon this plane are also in the vision that she doesn't do us justice in her heart sometimes, but she aims for the wise ones, right? Not always. She sees every soul as on its way to its beauty in form. In form is where the souls are that have done this work and gone through the process of soul expression. So that's why Brenda knows that people are thinking, just because they're walking around in the vision of, I'm a soul in human form, you are but one expression of who you are as soul. You have many expressions to reveal yourself to when you cross over to the other side. This is why many are listening not only to themselves when in the mirror, when they see themselves, they are also creating those thought forms about themselves in various ways, and the plays of life. Okay, so it's like a story. Okay, we're creating stories with others on this plane about what is good or bad. And in essence, many are utilizing this as a destructive vision rather than the highlight of the beauty of who they were and what they garnered for us in the wisdom that they showed us. This is why many are saying it doesn't mean we agree with everything that we've done or said, but we can understand the place of victimhood that we often placed ourselves in, or the ideal religious aspirations would say, I was given and granted redemption when I crossed over immediately. I took no banter, is where her friend is. So when people are saying that Brenda is a serious soul, when it comes to the nature of the love of soul, it means that those souls who she caretakes in her hearts are often some of the most heartfelt, loved, adored, and cherished from their soul, but they are beaten up and bruised in their minds here so much that they have not figured out how to rise above the pain and destruction that they are placing upon the screen and instead highlight the beauty of who we are as souls. That's their beauty. Okay, their expressions are the beauty. They are showing us where they are. That's what Brenda says. Most people know when she says, you're showing me more of who you are, you better believe she knows it. And it's often from a place of, you've got some values there that are able to be looked at. And most often, it is not about political ideologies. It's more about those who are utilizing their wisdom to either attack others, demean others, go after others in various ways, whether it is passive aggressive. She knows the psychology of a lot of souls. They have some issues here. Okay. Now, the thing is that when Brenda says that, it is due to the nature of her own background in psychology and the nature of shadow vision. It is a loved, adored vision by so many souls because it means we look inside ourselves and ask ourselves the questions that we wouldn't want others to hear, correct? Those are those humbling moments that your soul will come through with and say, this is part of it. So when Brenda is hearing from the past, right, it's still a present moment in its creation. And it's whether or not we can rise above the victimhood and see people as loving in their vision. And if they aren't, Brenda says, I understand. I was aligned with a soul who thought that their view of beauty was to undermine others' success. And when that vision comes through, Brenda is now understanding why people are going, oh, this is interesting, right? Because the vision is of my past. But if they are still on this realm, I'm getting the truth from my own soul about what those characteristics typically reveal from a soul level. The love is always there. The vision is not. To love does not mean agreement. To love does not mean we stay in relationships where abusive visions are coming through. And that's why some souls who are in the vision of, I was part of a religious institution, saying that Brenda was aligning with the Pope of a John Paul, okay? And in his vision, when she contemplates it's like the procrastination effect of their diligence in changing their rules and love for all. Because what they are showing us is not the acceptance of all, but the beauty of who they are in their wisdom. They accept the critiques very wisely. They understand they were not of the highest of the high when it came to the nature of how we treat our loved ones or our friends. Brenda herself has her own vision of how she gets to come into contact with aspects of her soul that were not the most enjoyable for her. And she said, yeah, that's the humbling part, right? That's the guilt sometimes that we have to work through. I wasn't the best of the best in those moments. But it doesn't mean that we don't lift ourselves up to the nature of those who say, but my wisdom is that those who were granted that kind of vision in the past often have their own hearts handed to them in various ways. When they cross over, they can see where they made mistakes in their mind. But in all essence, it was an essence of a soul that she's working with. When you hear the essence of somebody who loves you, you feel it as the whole thing, because it's more like an aspect of who I am is still free and clear from the nature of other souls on this plane who are doing their best to be who they are in the ways that they are. That is still beautiful. But in honoring of who I am as a soul, I also have my ways about me that may challenge certain people in the ideas of what love truly feels like. Okay? And now, that's why when Brenda says how souls from the past create with us, it means it's an informational topic about our souls communicating with each other from various realms of love. And when others say they are in the friendship realm with Brenda, whether or not they understand it as that, it doesn't mean that it's a separate place. It means it's more like a vibrational frequency that we inhabit. And if you can get to those highest levels of love that say that we're all loved, adored, and cherished by the vision of who we are as souls on this plane, and any other is where others go, because our lives are more than who we are here. And this is why Brenda says our past is our past. We focus on the present moment, but in essence, this is why when we go through the idea of historical loves and whatnot, people will say that this is about saying that there is an honor of each of our souls as we walk this plane. Or any other, to be honest. It depends, because there are some planes that are really not good for most people. And those are those souls that are really trying hard to get out of it. And in doing so, they try to take others down with them. Those are those ideas that others are saying, they believe in the demons and whatnot. Those are souls that need to make other choices. It's as simple as that. They have the ability to make a different choice and create from a different vibration if they so choose. Now, when Brenda says that, most of us think it's someone other than who we are. And this is why other souls are going to start to squirm in their seats. Because most often, those outer visions that people are, quote, projecting upon are those aspects of what they themselves have denied in their own being. And we want people to understand the nature of denial that most souls are working under on this plane, Brenda included in certain aspects. She often has the denial aspect at her feet, saying, I understand. It is incredibly difficult to admit defeat to another soul who says, I'm going to make sure that you vibrate out of the beauty of who you are so I can pretend that I'm somehow the same as you. She dealt with that. Others are going after others who are flourishing in their hearts and their minds just for the sake of being right or wrong. Brenda has had her moments of it in those views of those of the past, right? Because we often look to the past and we think those souls are somehow beyond the critique, but they are in fact visibly present in the moment. They are in fact present in our hearts and our souls, okay? They are the inspirational wisdom that we are granting for ourselves each and every time. With each and every breath, we know we are one, right? And so when those souls claim they are of that, they are not necessarily looking at others as if that was them. And this is why those souls are saying, I'm going to separate myself immediately from that vision. These are the books of separation, obviously. Correct? This group is not worthy of my love. This group is not worthy of my adoration, right? This is for our souls to do, because we do vibrate in the beauty of who we are as souls. And their souls are always granted that vision. And that's why Brenda can bring that forth in a way that is respectful and honoring of who you are. And that is why she usually hears from those souls who are on the same level of love and understanding that she vibrates in, which is basically beauty for all of us, even when we don't shine our brightest light. Okay? This is why Brenda it's not about the nuances of soul. It's about the spectrums of love that people are vibrating in. And you can take that to the bank. Okay? So anyone that claims that anyone here is not of love has not risen in their mind enough to see the beauty of each soul as they chose to come upon this plane for various reasons. We've chosen our families. Often we do it consciously, right? Most people are saying, I had no idea. That is a load of garbage. Anyone that knows anything about the souls as we come into this view, we are indeed on the soul level. Choosing to attack people, correct? That's where many are. Brenda has her moments of it going, oh my gosh, what's going on? Or she'll hear something and assume it's from somebody else. And that's when she herself has to honor the vision of honesty, right? I'm just the innocent victim is what many will say. When they cross over, they will see how much damage they've done to others in their realms. They will see it and feel it. It is a split second in many people's mind, but it is a caretaking vision for those of the Christian Enlightenment period as well. They have created that realm where it's just a quick dip in the pool of love, and then they're free and clear to go create from a different vision if they so choose. Okay? It's not the end all be all. We keep creating, we keep moving forward, we keep moving backwards, right? We can choose to go traverse various realms from different perspectives if we want. And that's why the past is part of our heart. It's part of our future. It sends us the love, is what it does. Okay? Because in essence, it's like it's a vibrational shift that we're working with, that people are starting to understand as the end of times. It's the shift in who we are as souls. We're now starting to see ourselves as the internal beauty within that then we are able to bring forth, rather than the external beauty that we portray ourselves to be or connecting with or as. Okay? It doesn't mean it's not a demonic possession that others are claiming that they saw. They've seen things that they created with, and those are the internal visions only. It has nothing to do with something that needs to be dealt with. Most often, it is often an acceptance and loving of the nature of who we are in our world. Most often. There are the exceptions, of course, with various souls who've decided to do various things with their minds, and their souls will give them that expression of it. And we want you to understand what that means for many. They're going to start to have more compassion, not only for themselves, but for those around them who are going through troubled times. Now, those troubled times also mean that if they see someone struggling in their mind, it has nothing to do with a, quote, devilish duty. It is literally those souls who are vibrating in that vision, thinking that they're going to project that onto others, and then those souls create that vision often. Brenda sits there and struggles with some of those souls, places that fear into her heart, right? She has a physical forward motion that she often does where she says, I step into it and I analyze it for what it is. Usually it's a lower life form is what others would say. She's like, it's a vision of love of who I am. And I know how to work with it, which means that I don't delve into it. I most often unwind it from a place of love, of the higher levels of love that I tap into. I don't have to extinguish any aspect of who I am. None is there to extinguish, is where Brenda goes with most people. Most people are working with the idea that they're of love and friendship and adoration from various relatives or loved ones that they have created with. That goes the same for those of our past. Okay? They are here to help us with the knowledge that they have about those spiritual enlightenment souls who say that all is well on the soul level. It is if you're in the vision of, I'm enlightened. I'm not charging forth with victimhood. I understand the nature of who I am, and I can see the beauty in those who are struggling. And I'm able to tap into the nature of my own internal wisdom often, but sometimes it's the nature of my own soul is lifted so high into the vision of the love of all that I am attracting those souls who say, she will give you the most honest, egregious vision, right? Some people think that egregious visions are about what she has placed on the screen in the past, because they will see certain souls as the most horrible or horrific beings that have walked this plane and say they don't deserve to have the love. And we want to honor those who then start to understand, what is that you're telling yourself about who you are? Do you yourself judge yourself as worthy of love? And why would you grant that soul that vision if you yourself didn't feel that you honored every single bit of who you were? Brenda will say that any characteristic that she finds of admiration or nobility, right? She's of nobility. So these are the ideas of other souls who are saying the nature of slave state is where many are working from those ideas of the past. They're helping us unwind our own vision, but they're also planting the seeds that they are still in the ideas of I'm an eternal victim. If they keep highlighting the vision as, there's something wrong with me versus the choices that we've made. We're all here doing different things. There's no egregious vision. What it is that those souls who she's brought through, who have been claimed to be of the all and the love of all, they are not denied love. How many people want to come in thinking that someone was denied love? Did they not choose their families from the other side of the veil? Are you going to caretake the families? How many family trees are you going to belittle? That's where they're going. They're saying our family trees are all that. Do you know the expansiveness of Brenda's wisdom? Her own family's of mixed race. Okay? So who gets denied the ancestral love? Right? It's about who we are, not necessarily some attachment to a lineage. Okay? Because we will have different shapes and forms as our soul. Our soul is expanding in various ways. We have different lifetimes that we've chosen to come into. That's the nature of it. So that's why we don't deny the past. You never know who you're going to attract when you come into the vision of love. Okay? And this is why these are the messengers of the past saying, I'm Brenda's friend and she's not all that and more, right? I've had that expression before brought to me, and I understand why. It's the limitation of her heart. I have my own limitations sometimes. Okay? So this is not telling everybody how to be. But if you want to understand the nature of when people say, oh, this was a horrible crime that these people are committing, and others are saying, I'm just in the victimhood of who I am. Okay? This can be that kind of soul. Brenda will invest in certain victimhoods in her mind sometimes so she can vibrate out of it and say, oh, I know what that's from. Okay, so that's the beauty of who you are. You say to yourself, I know why I'm hurting. And if you feel like there's something out in the world that needs to change, by all means, continue to work towards those visions. But often the vision of love comes from an internal shift only. Because what we see is what we produce, right? What we see is what we are creating. We're creating love in a lot of ways. The majority of the people that walk on this plane can go out into their front yard, look around, and see how people are living their lives, right? In peace, right? It does not matter what they're thinking. Are they actively hurting you? That's what people have to start to understand. This is where others are saying, oh no, there's way more than that, and we understand that. But when you go to the idea that I am assuming everyone is on my side or not. This is why people are like, so hung up about Jesus, because he was of love of all and he would accept all. And yet in their vision, they don't aspire to such a vision of love, correct? I accept you, I just don't like you. You don't have to like everything in order to see the love behind it. Okay, that's the behind the veil love. And what happens is those souls who come through often are very condemning of themselves for the energy in which they created with, right? If anything, they're going to admit their own soul's wisdom wasn't of the highest when they were on this plane, or they will honor it and say, I learned a lot while I was there. I learned a lot about who I was when I went to that plane. And now that I'm free from that plane, I can express freely and have a beautiful vision for myself and my family and express that vision moving forward. And that's where we are. It can be a hard road to travel. And when we talk about people who are utilizing those visions of friendship with their own heart, that's why you go to your own soul first. Because in essence, well, no one's going to be told, but that's where we're really aiming for people to align with who they are as soul first. And you open it from the inside. It's an internal battle for some. It can feel like a battle, but you get through it, and then the vibration opens up to the freedom of all. The freedom to be who you are, the love of who you are, the mastery of who you are. And others are saying, I pretend to be a master in my own way when I'm a victim and I'm laying blame on everybody else but my own soul for my own actions or visions that cause me the pain in which I am arriving on this plane, right? No, this is not about that. There are souls who are here to express as pain and suffering only, because they come in for a brief period of time, reveal the source of wisdom of reflection to the world about our strengths and beauties as souls, and then we eject ourselves out of the nature of who we are. These are those victims of the moment who decide, I need to leave immediately because this is too uncomfortable for me. If you are an actual victim in the moment, then you need to seek help. If you were in the vision of, I was a victim and now I'm working my way out of it, I'm on my way forward, is where many are. I don't need to hang out with those who created the heartache with me. It just becomes a peace process, and then we move along on our path forward, creating here, most often, with those souls that love us and adore us for who we are. And everyone will say, well, not everyone adores me. Trust me, on the soul level, if you aren't creating havoc for everyone around you, your souls are going to be loving you for it. Okay? They're going to say, we did this well. We did this relationship well. Whether or not we agreed on everything, we did well. That's where Brenda is with her ex-spouse. We did well. We did well by ourselves and our souls. We have an honesty about the nature of creation. We have an honesty about the nature of who we are, and we have an honesty about the nature of joint ventures. How many people want to do a joint venture with Brenda where she says, I can bring you your hearts, whether or not I agree with them or not, on my own? I don't disagree with who you are. I understand that you're here to serve a purpose in life. Okay, and that's why your past is often brought through as a hidden ticket to glory, to who you really are. Who were you before X, Y, or Z? But to be honest, the purpose that you have is right in this moment. I'm planting the seeds of love for myself and others around me, correct? But what does that mean? Often it's a subjective vision is what some people say. Absolutely. Because others are feeling that some sense of purpose is a bad thing, right? A purpose is about being. That's where most of us are. I'm just in my moment being. That's a purpose. It's a great one to be in. You don't have to think about your purpose. You act on your purpose. Every moment of every breath, you are in your purpose. You don't have to state it with clarity and definitions and whatnot. You just say, here I am. That's your purpose right now. Okay? You get to have those souls around you who loved you in your past or from the past, who align with you. Brenda still hears from those souls that she created with in the moment, right? Either of victimization or those who inspired her or were on her ticket to paradise in the idea that they are of peacemaking in their own ways and were able to show us more about who we are on this plane. Desmond Tutu was one of those that she recently heard from again. Okay? And she doesn't go online and tell everyone who she's working with, but they come in spades. They come in spades because they know that her vision is so high in mind, most often, that she can't see the beauty of the moment as it is playing out. And what that means is that when there is a firecracker of a soul who's laying blame on someone else left and right, Brenda herself sometimes collapses her soul a little bit and feels the discomfort and the disjointedness of who she is and says, this doesn't feel right for me. And then she has to work her way through the vision of expansion rather than contraction of who her heart is. And that's why when souls come in, it can be a hard place to create from if you're like, I understand that we're all on the level of love for all of us. I already know that. My soul grants me that vision. That's why we want you all to see how some of those feelings are meant to get you out of those situations as well. That's why Brenda's not saying you walk around in the Pollyanna. Sometimes we have to make those choices to say, this isn't the best place for me. And your souls will grant you that. Get out of Dodge, right? Some people say, I'm just going to keep moving until I find the right place that feels good for me. Brenda's landed in a spot that's justifiably beautiful for her. She loves herself, her soul, and her wisdom. What we want is for you to experience that for yourselves as well. And that's what she's creating with her own soul, is a process of enlightenment that allows for everyone to become who they really are without the conditioning of her. It's not about being her. She's always known that. We can inspire others, but it's about being you. And even if you doesn't like me, I can appreciate the vision of it. As long as your own vision resonates with you in the way that makes you feel of honor and respect and dignity, right? How many say, oh, I want to feel that? Don't you want to feel honored and respected and dignified in your being? It could be you want to feel masterful in your purpose, right? So there's no definition, but for myself personally, that's where I go. But I know others want to feel revered for their wisdom, revered for their awesome abilities to play the guitar or the piano. Others are looking for those ideas of what is my genius? And we don't mean those talents and abilities that somehow elevate us in certain people's minds. But that's where you all are in your expressions, whether or not you've tapped into it in a way that is more revealing or not. Brenda happens to know systems of enlightenment that are beyond most people's understanding about how she knows to create with souls from a place of love of bias, right? That's where others are. Love of bias. Brenda attacks the bias in us, and she assumes that we're all free and clear of it when we're on the soul level. It can kind of sneak in sometimes depending on where she's at. And then her soul's like, remember this? And she's like, yep, I remember. It's not about the mind. She's more about the heart anyways, because We all do have our biases. We all have our conditioning that we came in with. If we were to find ourselves in another place and time, or in another location that's even here, we would have different ideas about who we were or who we are. And that's why we want people to understand the soul's journey is a breath. It's a moment. Okay? It's a moment in time and space. And that's why we're like gorgeous for who we are in each and every moment of it. Because our souls vibrate in it when we are able to reach it. And we don't allow others to demean it, other than the fact that we would understand why it can be off-putting for certain souls who want to vibrate in a more natural state of what soul is. Brenda aims so high because in essence she knows that she's working with souls who are like attack dogs, right? They're not labeled attack dogs, but they attack like dogs. Okay, they come after people. They sling their swords of dignity, right? These are people that are still here creating the wars. And what we're really working with is the war within. So when you feel the trigger, that's your cue to go in and ask yourself, why would I have this vision? Okay, Brenda is always like, ask yourself the question before you put something out there on someone else's vision, their comments or their vision. Why am I commenting the way that I'm commenting? What's the reason behind my reaction? I'm not happy, right? That's a general thing. But when you go to soul, you start to get answers to those questions. And a lot of it is very simple. It's like things aren't the way that I want it to be. Or this isn't, the justified way of being. Or these people are hurting other people. But in doing that vision, is hurting them back somehow going to allow for them to what? See themselves as the victims and then they go underground. This is what usually happens. This is why Brenda is very aware and cognizant of the uses of guilt and blame and shame, and how people are very much aware of what works because it was often placed upon us as a child. And we have to work through those feelings, and then when you see it, you start to understand it. Most people are utilizing it without even realizing what it actually is or what it portends to be. It is a tool of discomfort for others to then work their way out of it, most often, and say, I know where my beauty rises. Okay? That's why a lot of people are hesitant to work with Brenda, because she has those higher levels of love that know how to come in and say, you're loved and adored for each and every moment of each and every breath, even when you hurt somebody, right? That's that highest high that others don't like. But in essence, it doesn't mean that their soul would be telling them just that. They would be getting wisdom handed to them, explaining what's going on, why it's going on, and how they can maybe utilize different tools or ideas to work themselves out of those ideas that they are somehow bad children or bad people. We don't label ourselves good or bad. That's duality of soul. It's very limiting. Very honorable souls come through and say, I was labeled this, this, and this, and I had to rise above it. And that's usually what people are doing when they come see me. They're rising out of the conditioning that put them in a limited viewpoint of who they were or are. And they want to see themselves as the beauty, just as we all do. Okay? So Brenda grants that to everybody, because that's her vision. If I'm going to place something on me, I am going to place something on me, it would be something I would grant to every single soul walking on this plane. Because it's only right. If I want to state that I'm beautiful in form, then everyone is beautiful in form. If I want to say that I'm wise in my wisdom, then every soul on this plane is wise in their wisdom. Okay? That's how beautiful and wise that I am, to know that I'm granting everyone those same beautiful attributes that I myself hold myself to, right? It's not a check mark on how to perform a miracle, but that's where I go. I also allow for people access to those miracle makings that I myself am able to bring through for us. And many are saying it's like the wisdom of God. And in essence, this is where others are saying it's the God souls within each of us. Okay, but Brenda is more like, I utilize source, and that's why I just say soul, because in essence, it's a leveling up into it's like human forms are not limited anymore by the wisdom of the books that say that we fall when we come here. It is not a falling out or anything or a less than. It's just a vibrational frequency we inhabit, and many of our young ones come in holding it strong and true, and they don't leave it. So that's why the idea that all of us are in some kind of form or shape that's less than is ridiculous, because we are here to enjoy the vision at this point, if we can. There are plenty of people who are suffering, but in essence, think about many who are just there to cherish the touch of a baby's cheek to theirs. Okay? That's the kind of beauty that we're talking about. It doesn't have to be the physical expression of who we are. It doesn't have to be a moment of prayer, but that can be that vision of looking within and saying, I'm of honor and dignity and love, not only for myself, my family, my friends, everyone around me, right? We're grateful for the experiences of love that we're receiving. Even when it hurts, it's showing us something about us. It's allowing us to expand our hearts, is where Brenda goes. And our minds. That's where the limitation really truly is most often, not in the heart. So when those of our past come to us, they often come with a dignity and an honesty that can sometimes be humbling, but is often most respectful and loving. It's more detached in its wisdom. It means it doesn't sound so personal, but sounds more enlightened, loving, adoring when it's your own soul. But that's who we are as souls. And so that's why you start to hear those visions coming in that are more aligned with the nature of, I can understand why that's a beautiful expression for us. We're all in that vibration at some point. Years down the road, right? We're talking generations. But this is the coming of the tide of awareness of love for all of us, not just some of us. Okay? So it doesn't mean that we demean others in their beauty or in their wisdom. But we do understand that others are seeing, how does one get there, is what Brenda is working through, in a way that is very respectful for the most part. She has her moments of disrespect for souls because they come through to challenge her in her wisdom. When she says something's not right, she's a full-bodied soul that knows how to feel her way through the world. And that's why it's a little bit hard when everyone else is saying, oh, the emotions are the problem, and she's saying, that's how I feel my way through the world. Okay, because I understand words are words, but when I know that there's something else going on, it's a vibrational frequency that we can often feel rather than hear. Okay, how many people know that their words are not necessarily the vibration in which they place it, especially if it's something that is written down but is not felt, right? So we want everyone to see the beauty of who they are, feel the beauty of who they are, experience the beauty of who they are. And in doing so, you may just figure out that when we grant that to others, that's when the magic starts to happen. That's when the film stars start to rise in their vibration, right? Brenda hears from a lot of different souls of fame and fortune or just notoriety even. And that's why we understand the limitations that many have with who they want to create with here. And it's a wise thing to do, because we are at the point where we can kind of discern, where am I going to be creating well with someone? Brenda says, well, we're always creating well. It's just more about creating more enjoyable experiences for who we are. Because we do live in a world of limitations of minds. And when we do that, we can understand why certain minds are conditioned to believe that, those who have taken their own lives, crossed over, are somehow left to deal, the blow. Brenda's had to deal with those souls on a level that is unheard of in some ways. And she remembers the pain and misfortune of many. But she does remember their beauty. And that's what the recommended vision is to say, I remember you as beautiful for who you were, whether or not you chose that or not, depending on your state of mind. And we must remember that often those visions are states of mind. It has nothing to do with their soul's vision of what love is or isn't. And so with that, we want to say thank you for watching. Honor your hearts always. Be at peace with oneself. Be at peace with others when at all possible. And have a wonderful day.